Falls Township Board of Supervisors meeting for October 16th, 2018. Apologize for the late start, but can we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Almost have to stop myself a couple times from saying Mrs. Pullen tonight. Mrs. Mall, take the roll, please.
Mr. Galloway?
Here.
Mr. Boraski?
Here.
Mr. Harvey?
Here.
Mr. Dents?
Here.
Mr. Rock?
Here.
Okay. Before we begin, I'm going to ask our solicitor to summarize. We had an executive session before this meeting, and we also had one about 2 weeks ago. Mr. Clark?
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. On October 2nd of this year, the board held an executive session to discuss various personnel matters and several matters of potential litigation. And earlier this evening, the board held an executive session to discuss potential litigation and a personnel matter.
Okay, thank you. All right. As most people know, at least I hope most people know, October is always the time of year where fire prevention is stressed. The 3 fire companies in Falls Township all have different events and activities to make people aware of ways to stay safe, keep their families safe, keep their businesses protected from fire. This past Saturday, Fallsington Day, Falls Township Fire Company had their event. I think Levittown Fire Company had theirs on Sunday. I think Farrell's Hills is actually doing it tonight.
No.
Yeah, is doing it tonight. But typically you tell people to change their smoke alarms. I guess you should still do it in October. It used to be whenever you set the clocks back and forward, but now instead of April and October, now you're setting the clocks in, was it March and November now? So, but still a good idea. Make sure you have your smoke detectors up to date, carbon monoxide detectors as well. But we're honored tonight to pay special attention to our oldest fire company, our first fire company, Falls Township Fire Company, which is celebrating 90 years this year. And we have a lot of their volunteers are out here tonight. Some guys have been with this company for a very, very long time. Some were gone and now have come back, thankfully. And we have a lot of new members. They're picking up a lot of young guys, and this is a good fire company that's done a lot of great work, and we look forward to them working for another at least 90 years. Not with these guys, but at least another 90 years here in Falls Township. But we do have a proclamation I want to read, and then we'll vote on and have this presentation. Whereas the volunteers of the Falls Township Fire Company, located in the Township of Falls, have continually and courageously served and protected the residents and properties of the people of Falls Township, and whereas the Falls Township Fire Company, having been founded in 1928, is currently celebrating its 90th anniversary in the service of the community of Falls Township, and whereas the members of the fire company continue to make valuable contributions to the lives and citizens of Falls Township and serve as invaluable members of our community. Therefore, the Board of Supervisors of the Township of Falls, on behalf of the citizens, does hereby issue this proclamation to the members, past and present, of the Falls Township Fire Company, expressing its sincere congratulations and gratitude for 90 years of dedication and service to the community, and hopes for many more decades of successful and safe service. Proclaimed the 16th day of October, 2018. Is there a motion for this proclamation?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I don't know if anybody wants to speak. If anybody would like to, don't have to. We didn't talk about that. But if anybody wanted to, somebody draw a short straw and coming up. Yeah, Mike.
I'll introduce myself. I'm Mike McClellan Jr., president of this great organization here. And we would just like to thank the board for this recognition. We'd like to thank the township supervisors for always supporting us in every endeavor. We'd also like to thank the community for providing support. We'd also like to thank the community for providing during all of our fundraising events and our Santa runs, where we are able to give back to the community. Without the community's support and the board's support, we wouldn't be where we are today. So we'd like to thank everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we has, and we'll remind the public too here in Falls Township that all three fire companies here in Falls, Falls Township, Levittown, and Farrell Hills are volunteer organizations. They're always looking for volunteers to come and help out. You know, it is a great group of people. All three fire companies. We're really lucky to have three great fire companies here. And obviously, they rely on funds from us, but also funds from the public. And so consider, donations. No donations too small to help out your local firefighters. Right? So something we hope you keep in mind. Okay. All right, we're going to move on with our agenda here. Item number 1 is public comment. We have one name on the list, Guido Mariani.
I don't even see him back
Oh,
there.
there he is.
Doing way back there.
Uh-oh.
And then I'll talk to Aldrich. And tell him, you're gonna get your approvals later on. Just such an ass.
Those men deserve all the support we can give them. They really do. Marijuana. Marijuana is a dangerous and gateway drug. What you need to know about marijuana, this is about the third time I'm bringing this up to the board. Each year, over 19 million people in the United States use or are dependent on marijuana. In 2015, that was the most recent year that there was any data available. 138,000 people had to get treatment. The National Institute on Drug Abuse reports a person who smokes marijuana is greater than 104 times more likely to use cocaine or go on to another drug rather than a person who never tried it. National surveys say between 43 and 48% of Americans have tried marijuana. So, looking at the facts, it's important to understand that smoking pot, I'm telling you, and allowing it is a slippery slope. It can become an addiction. I believe it does become an addiction. And studies suggest 1 in every 9 users do become addicted to marijuana, and it leads to experimentation with other drugs. So don't ignore the risks of marijuana, especially when it comes to young people. That's where a great threat is, because 6.5% of all high school seniors admit they use marijuana daily. So again, I'm asking this Board of Supervisors to pass an ordinance to keep this death rattle, this dangerous thing, out of Falls Township. So there's an election coming up, I guess within another 21 days or whatever. And I would urge everyone to vote. And when you vote, vote against any candidate who favors legalizing this drug, because other drugs are going to follow. I know how the chairman feels about legalizing marijuana, but I don't know how the other 4 members of this board, what is your position on legalizing marijuana? You're a representative, so I'm asking you.
I don't think we're legalizing anything.
You're what?
Us, we're not legalizing marijuana, the 5 of us, is that what you mean?
No.
Oh, in general?
Oh, no. Good grief. I hope you're not. No. But I'd like to know what your position is on it. Do you think it's okay? You don't think it's okay? You're opposed to it? You are in favor of passing an ordinance to keep it out of Falls, or you're not?
Can we even do that, Mr. Clark?
No, this would clearly be preempted either by the state or by the federal government. If they legalize it, we'd be able to, they would give us the guidelines of how we could restrict where it's used. But It's like with medical marijuana. You cannot, no municipality is allowed to outright prohibit the sale of medical marijuana.
No, but you could prevent the tools that they need to bring it in and to maintain it.
For medical marijuana or for recreational use? I'm confused here now.
Well, for either. There is no
Recreational.
recreational marijuana in the state of Pennsylvania. There is only
Yeah.
medical marijuana.
I know, I didn't know what,
And the restrictions that are placed on the municipalities can only place restrictions on it that are provided for us by the state in the legislation or by the Department of Health in the rules that they have produced for handling medical marijuana. I would suspect that if the state ever approved recreational marijuana, that we would get the same kind of limitations on what we could do or what we couldn't do. But I don't think medical marijuana is being proposed in Pennsylvania right now.
No, recreational.
Recreational,
Yeah.
excuse
Yeah,
me.
no, I don't think anybody's opposed to medical marijuana. Certainly I'm not. I think you could restrict it. I think you could make life very, very difficult for its distribution and its use in the township. And I would do everything I can to hinder it.
It's coming.
So
You know.
it's coming.
It's
Would
coming.
you
Sure.
pass this, please? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We didn't see you back there. You're way in the back, I know.
Why? I take my glasses off to see this.
That's the only name I had on either of the lists. Is there anybody else who wished to speak who did not sign up? Okay, we'll move on to the next part of our agenda. Item 2 is Airgas USA LLC minor subdivision and preliminary and final land development. Mr. Gray.
Yes, the applicant is, proposed improvements consist of subdividing Lot 1 into 2 lots, whereas proposed Lot 2 will consist of 8.77 acres, and also construction of an air separation unit and liquefier. Tonight, representing the applicant is Mr. Tom Jennings and Jesse Carter.
Mr. Jennings.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Gray, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tom Jennings. I represent Airgas in the matter before you this evening. Airgas is seeking your adoption of 2 resolutions, one for a minor subdivision and one for preliminary and final land development. Airgas has appeared before the Falls Planning Commission on August 28th. Received approval at that time and has worked with the township staff to update the plans accordingly. Airgas has signed a purchase and sale agreement with U.S. Steel for an 8.77 acre site at KIPC and is scheduled to close in the very near future. The property is currently an unimproved lot within the main TMP, thus the application for subdivision, which is supported by the property owner. The property is within the MPM Materials Processing and Manufacturing District. Airgas proposes to construct and operate an air separation unit at the site, which will be described by Jesse Carter, Airgas project developer. That use fits within the MPM principal permitted uses. Airgas has worked with the township staff on siting and design issues for nearly 1 year. Airgas has also worked closely with the County Conservation District and DEP on several issues relating to the NPDES permit. That application has been determined as complete by the County Conservation District and is currently under review at DEP with approval projected this fall. And Airgas is finalizing the last details of a project labor agreement with the Philadelphia Building Trades. With that, I would like to invite Jesse Carter to describe the project for you and lead you through the drawings as you may wish.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, members of the board, staff. We really appreciate the support we've received to date. What I'd like to do is provide just a brief overview of the company and the project itself. Airgas is the nation's leading manufacturer and supplier of industrial gases, welding equipment and supplies, and safety products. Airgas has more than 1 million customers individually in the United States. When we talk about gases in the context of this project, industrial gases, we're talking about atmospheric gases, and that's the subject of this project. So I'll provide some comments around that in just a few moments. In terms of Airgas in Pennsylvania, we are a local company. We're headquartered in Radnor. We have over 40 locations within 100 miles of the city of Philadelphia, including retail branches. The subject of this project today is to talk about the development and air separation plant. In fact, Airgas operates 2 air separation plants today in the region, one in Coatesville and one in Reading. The facility in Reading has been operating for more than 40 years, so this is very much a long-term investment for the company and for the community. Airgas is part of the Air Liquide Group, which is the world leader in supply of gases for industry and for health. Air Liquide has been in business for more than 100 years, and as a collective, Airgas and Air Liquide employ more than 1,200 people in the state of Pennsylvania. The company is growing, Airgas and Air Liquide both. You may be familiar with projects that were announced this summer by Air Liquide and by Airgas in Bucks County and in Northampton County, adding as a collective more than 200 jobs. This project that we're discussing today will add an additional 25 jobs, new jobs, in Bucks County. The sort of the justification, the reasoning for the project in brief, Airgas in connection with this project will be manufacturing oxygen, nitrogen, and argon. The driver for us as a business to build in the KIPC connection with this development is to enhance the reliability of our supply of oxygen to hospitals. Today we supply more than 20 hospitals in the Delaware Valley and in the Lehigh Valley, and this will supplement that supply, manage growing demand. Just a brief comment, and then I'll close and open up to any questions. We can review the plans about the process in particular. An air separation plant is a clean industrial process. It uses as its only raw material ambient air, so the same air that we breathe. It emits no emissions whatsoever and produces no hazardous or residual waste in connection with the operations. The process consists of incoming air being compressed, again, the same ambient air we breathe. That air is then purified, whereby contaminants such as dirt, dust, and moisture are removed. And that clean, dry gas is then fed to a cryogenic distillation unit where the air is actually cooled to cryogenic temperatures. It's distilled, much like perhaps your favorite spirit, and that liquid product then is sent to storage facilities that we distribute to local customers, including hospitals. So with that, as an introduction to the company and the project, I'll open it up to any questions. We are displaying, as a matter of reference, the site plan connected to the land development, which shows an outline of our core operating area, as well as a stormwater facility and the cartway going around the outside of the unit. Take any questions.
As a preface to that, if I might, Jesse, Airgas has worked, as I said, with the township staff, among others. We worked extensively with the comments provided by the township engineer, the traffic engineer, the county planning commission. We are seeking 4 waivers for the subdivision, what I'll call sort of traditional KIPC-oriented waivers, a handful more for the land development application. And as regards the various comments we've received, they're all will comply issues, or we have complied with those who have submitted the comments. Jesse, any questions for Jesse on the plant or the applications?
All right, so board questions for Mr. Carter regarding the operations, or for Mr. Jennings regarding any of the waivers for the waiver, or waivers for the subdivision, or waivers for the plan itself. Mr. Galloway.
Just one question about the easement, a permanent structure within so many feet of an easement. That's the waiver you're asking for? Could you just explain that to me?
Yes. So the property, as you all know, is a brownfield property, and it's subject to a blanket easement in favor of the seller for all of the existing utilities on the site. And so that's the chief reason for our asking for that waiver. Specifically, let me get my bearings here. This landscaped area on this side of the property, there's a high voltage electrical easement and a number of water, underground water lines that again are blanket in nature in favor of the seller. And so, as an example, those are the reason, those among others, for example, this drainage easement over here are the reason we're requesting that waiver.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have nothing right now, thanks.
Mr. Dents?
No.
Mr. Rocco?
I have nothing.
And Mr. Harvey, we did have an opportunity to review the approval resolutions, and we are fine with them as stated.
Okay. Yeah, my question, one of the questions I had was the same as Mr. Galloway's regarding the waivers, or the easement question rather. So oxygen, as you said, is going to go mostly to primarily to hospitals. What about the nitrogen and argon?
The nitrogen is used as an inerting agent in a variety of industries. It will be distributed to customers ranging from the electronics field to metal fabrication. It actually has medical applications as well because it's a preserving agent. It prevents oxidation. It also has food applications. As an example, in the Northeast, scallops are harvested in bulk, and those scallops need to be quick frozen. And our product, liquid nitrogen, is used to quickly freeze those scallops and preserve them for distribution throughout the nation, as an example.
Okay.
The argon is primarily used for welding.
Okay. All right. And how is this all stored and then transported?
So all the products produced in our distillation process in this area of the plot are fed through a short pipe rack to storage tanks here. These are double-line storage tanks, and the storage tanks then serve as inventory for our tractor trailers to pick up those products and distribute to the various customers I mentioned. One item of note, we often get this question, what happens if something leaks? Again, double-walled tanks. If anything leaks, it goes right back to where it came from. These are air products, so oxygen, nitrogen, and argon. We take them out of the air, we process them. If there's a leak, it goes right back to the air.
And a question someone might ask, I mean, obviously, it's transported by truck, right?
Yes.
Okay. And this is all liquefied, so it's obviously very, very cold.
Yes.
Is there any fear? Oxygen, as people know, is very flammable. People talk about being around oxygen tanks and be careful with flames. What's the danger for vehicles carrying liquid oxygen?
I would say no notable risk. Oxygen supports combustion, but in and of itself is not a fuel. As I mentioned, it's used in hospital applications to support breathing. We do manage this on the site in terms of keeping the products contained and separate from the production process, and we're not storing any fuels in bulk on the site to manage that risk.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any comments or questions from you, Mr. Sullivan?
Mr. Jennings, you have the permission of the owners of these easements to occupy the easements with permanent structures. Is that correct?
We do, Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you very much. That's all I have, Mr. Harvey.
Mr. Clark?
Mr. Jennings, obviously you're here tonight for a minor subdivision and preliminary and final land development. Is there a regulatory agency that has jurisdiction over the process that's been described this evening?
Well, it's the operation will be permitted by DEP, and the NPDES permit application has been pending and is under review, and with some sense we feel that will be approved by middle of November.
Do you have your DEP approvals to conduct this business at the KIPC?
We are waiting the final approval, as Tom mentioned. We did a review, I think, just 2 weeks ago with the DEP, 3 weeks ago. And minor issues, we expect to have an NPDES for construction middle of November.
Thank you. Nothing else, Mr. Harvey.
Okay. Any public comment? See no hands? Okay, so we're looking at two different resolutions. One is for the subdivision, and one is for preliminary and final. The subdivision, Mr. Gray, would be resolution
18-20.
20. Okay, and obviously then 21. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 1820 granting the minor subdivision for Airgas USA?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and if there are no comments or questions from board members, is there a motion to approve Resolution 1821, which grants preliminary and final for Airgas USA?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very
gentlemen.
much. Thank you.
Okay, item 3 is regarding Penske Truck Leasing, waiver of land development for 225 Newbold Road. Mr. Gray?
Yes, the applicant's proposed improvements consist of construction of a 1,600 square foot building expansion. Representing the applicant tonight is Mr. John Wildinger.
You do a pretty good job with that name, or no?
Yeah, Will Tanger, you're close.
Will Tech?
Yeah, Will Tanger.
Okay.
Thank you, Board of Supervisors, for having me here tonight. Just to give you a quick overview of our company, we are a full-service lease and maintenance trucking company that with about 800 locations across North America. We also work in the commercial and residential rental of box trucks for moving product, whatever you're looking for. Currently have about 13,000 employees in our company. And our body shop, which we are going to be working at for this building addition, supports our locations for any damage to our trucks. So what we're looking to do is add a 40-foot by 40-foot parts storage building, which will be constructed at the rear of the facility for the use of storing large body truck parts like bumpers, fenders, hoods, etc. It'll be a pole barn building with a concrete slab on grade. Existing asphalt in place will be removed to 24 inches wider than the building and will be replaced as a patch repair. Very minimal electrical, has 4 light fixtures and 2 switches and a couple outlets. No HVAC, no plumbing, it's strictly just a storage facility. Questions arise. The zoning performance standard, Penske's meets all the zoning performance. We will have a letter written by Evans Engineering sent in to confirm that. The construction details of the project are all listed on the drawing that is needed for the project. Bucks County Conservation District gave us a letter of adequacy in September, so we qualified for that. Fire Marshal did not have any comments towards our plan, and the traffic engineer only asked for a turning template on the plan of the garbage trucks going into the disposal. So we placed that on the plan. At that point, that's all I have. Any questions?
Okay. Comments or questions, Mr. Boltech?
Is there no waivers? No waivers?
I don't think so. I don't think there are any waivers.
Waiver for land development, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah.
That's it.
Now it's very straightforward.
Yeah, very straightforward.
Yeah.
That's simple, I have nothing.
Yeah, nothing. Mr. Sullivan, anything from you?
No.
Okay, Mr. Clark?
Nothing.
Okay, anything from the public? See no hands? Okay, that seemed pretty easy, huh? Yeah, is there a motion? This is Resolution 1822, correct?
Yes.
Waiver of land development for Penske truck leasing, excuse me. Is there a motion in?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 4 is Kent's Tree Service waiver of land development, similar to the one we just heard. Another looking for a pole barn for storage, apparently. Mr. Gray?
Yes. Similar to what you just mentioned, the applicant's proposed improvements consist of the construction of a new pole barn of an existing property over existing impervious surface area. Representing the applicant tonight is Ms. Kristen Holmes.
Good evening.
Evening.
The application before you, as Mr. Gray mentioned, is for a new 1,500 square foot pole barn that is being constructed on an existing property. The property is currently developed, and it is part of a Kent's Tree Service business. There is an existing structure on the property currently which houses the operations of the tree service business, as well as an apartment on the second floor of that building. The proposal before you is purely just for a new pole barn that will be added to the rear of the property. It will be essentially for storage of their vehicles of the tree service to be enclosed due to weather and operational reasons. The pole barn itself will be added over existing impervious, so we're not adding any additional site improvements, no additional impervious, therefore no additional stormwater management to be required for this project. No parking required as part of the pole barn, so it's pretty straightforward in the sense that it's in the fenced area to the rear of the property, so it is located behind gates of a secure area. And the previous comments that we had received, we had readjusted the location of the pole barn to make sure we were maintaining the required setbacks and providing enough egress behind the gates of the fence for fire truck circulation. We did receive various review letters through that, and most recently, the Jones Engineering letter dated October 5th, which purely identifies at this point the waivers that are being requested. So as part of this application, if you'd like, I could go through the waivers on this, or if there's any other questions.
Yeah, I think the waivers are pretty straightforward in that you're on Pennsylvania Avenue, so there's some, the curbing, required street trees, required sidewalks. There isn't any curbing or sidewalks in that area, and there really aren't many street trees. And then showing existing features within 200 feet. They're pretty straightforward waivers from what we see on a regular basis. Any comments or questions from board members? From Ms. Holmes?
No, it can't be any more straightforward than that.
No. Mr. Sullivan?
Not at this time, thank you.
Mr. Clark?
No questions.
Okay. Any public comment? Okay. See no hands. All right. Well, is there a motion then to or to pass Resolution 1823, which is a waiver of land development for OBB Real Estate, also known as Kent's Tree Service?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, and now we enter the Miss Gallagher portion of our program. So, for the past few years, the township township staff, in addition to our professionals, have done a very, very thorough review of the township zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance has always kind of be looked at as sort of a living thing. It does require updating. It requires clarification. Things change. One of the more recent things we've dealt with in the past couple of years is our sign ordinance, which had been around forever, and our zoning didn't really say anything about electric signs because they didn't exist when that ordinance was written. And so that obviously had to be updated because now you have electric signs at businesses and 50-foot tall electric,
Giant letter Ms.
Yeah, giant letter M's diagonal from our property, which we won't be putting up. But so yeah, we do have to go through those things, and it has been a very, very comprehensive review. And as you can see, it actually encompasses a lot of different pieces of our zoning ordinance. And so what we're doing tonight is advertising for changes to all these. And the board members were presented with binders that reflect all these changes, and the binders are about that thick in terms of the changes that are being done. It goes in with Mr. Bennett, who's our zoning officer, Mr. Sullivan, and our T&M staff, Mr. Jones from Jones Engineering, Ms. Gallagher. Really literally for years they've been working on this, and so items 5, 6, 7, 8. 9, 10, and 11 are all essentially authorizing advertisement of changes to those different parts of our zoning ordinance, which we look to approve in the next few months. So what I'm going to ask Ms. Gallagher to do is just sort of give a summary, just maybe some of the highlights, and then what I think we can do is just authorize advertising for all of those at once, rather than doing them each individually, because we're just authorizing advertisement. And then once they're advertised, then people can take a look at them and have questions and concerns, and and then we'll look, probably not November, probably early December, we'll look to have a special meeting just to approve this. There are a handful of properties in the township whose zoning is being changed, and we've made every effort to change them to a very logical form of zoning. And, usually it's not much of a change. It's just almost like a name change. In some cases, they were, businesses that were, in a district that, they're going to be moved into what's a neighborhood commercial residential, which is where they should be anyway, but they weren't necessarily in that district before, but now they're actually being moved into the district, or we're changing the name, because that's kind of what it should have always been. It doesn't really affect their ability to operate their business, but it is going to be something they'll get in the mail and see their zoning is changing. But we're going to make sure they understand that it's actually to their benefit. It's not going to harm them in any way. But I'll turn it over to Ms. Gallagher, and she can kind of go through some of these and just give us an idea of some of the things that we're changing that might, not all this is that interesting, quite frankly, but
I think it's fascinating.
Some of the things that for the average person might think, oh, okay, that's interesting. So go ahead, Ms. Gallagher, you're on.
Thank you. As you noted, there's about a dozen properties whose zoning will be changing. There will not be any change to the existing uses on any property in the township. So if a property is currently being used, it can continue to be used for that, whatever purpose it's currently being used, even with all these changes. What we did is essentially a cleanup of a lot of inconsistencies. When you change one part of the zoning ordinance and there's a reference to another part of the ordinance that you weren't aware of, it tends to create these inconsistencies. Particularly, there was a lot of inconsistencies between the zoning ordinance and the subdivision and land development ordinance. One example is the size of parking stalls was different in the zoning context versus the subdivision and land development context. So you were constantly granting waivers for that in the subdivision process because we can't require different size parking stalls in the same project. There was a recent United States Supreme Court case that came down regarding signs. So there is another comprehensive revision of the sign ordinance that brings us into compliance with that Supreme Court decision. We've done a complete rewrite of the telecommunications ordinance to reflect the current state of technology, and just done a lot of cleanup throughout the zoning code. With regard to the subdivision and land development, again, it's more just bringing it into consistency with the zoning ordinance. There was a lot of overlap between zoning concepts and subdivision concepts in the two ordinances, so we tried to separate out all the zoning concepts are now strictly in zoning and vice versa. The next was stormwater management. Again, this is just a cleanup. There were things that were not explicitly laid out in the stormwater ordinance, so this gives developers coming into the township a much better idea of what they need to do when it comes to stormwater. But this is things that they were already being required to do. This is now just put in the ordinance for them to see. For earth disturbance, it's much the same as the stormwater management. These are things that were already being required. Now it's just in the ordinance, so everyone's on notice about it. For pods and dumpsters, it's actually a separate chapter in the code. We do regulate their placement as far as where they can go in the streets and in what zoning districts, but this creates regulations regarding how long they can be on a property and whether permits are required and that sort of thing. The rights of way, again, this is just a cleanup of the existing ordinances, and it really sets forth what's required in order to occupy the rights of way within the township. And then the final ordinance, this part of this, is the tree protection standards. Currently, if a developer comes in for subdivision and land development and wants to remove a couple hundred trees, they have to replace them or put them somewhere else within their property. But if someone only requires an earth disturbance permit, we have no mechanism to require that. So this allows us to require the replacement of trees within a project that doesn't necessarily require subdivision or land development approval. So that's a broad brush overview of all the different ordinances. Happy to answer any questions. And Mr. Bennett and Mr. Jones are here for more specific technical questions if there are any.
Okay. All right. Comments or questions from Ms. Gallagher, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Jones, Mr. Sullivan?
None from me, thanks. I have
Mr.
the binder.
Medlar's making a guest appearance as well. So.
When did he sneak in? Yeah, I have a question for Mr. Jones and Mr. Bennett. What are we talking about when we say pods?
Yeah, pods are the temporary storage devices that they come on a truck. They drop them off at your house. Usually people use them if they have flood damage or a fire damage and they want to store their articles in there while the house is getting repaired, things of that nature.
People use them when they move.
When they move to.
You can use them if you move.
Oh, I know what you're talking about now. All right. And what about the tree protection standards? What's that all about?
It's so
Chapter
that
199.
So you just can't go and clear trees all over a lot without any type of permit or any type of regulation.
Okay.
But it does not kick in if you're only removing 1 or 2 trees. This is if you're removing a large area of trees.
How many does that mean?
I believe it's 5,000 square feet.
Oh, that makes
Yeah, it's
sense.
not like for the average homeowner.
Got ya.
If an average homeowner is taking a tree down, they'll be allowed to do that.
Okay.
If you're disturbing more than 5,000 square feet on any one property, then tree replacement kicks in.
Got ya.
Otherwise, it doesn't.
And we have had instances in the past where that amount of trees were removed and the township had no enforcement mechanism.
Right. Yeah, it's just relatively recently that happened, I think, right?
Okay, that's all I had.
Because I don't think we had any, I mean, pods are obviously relatively new, the concept.
Yeah, I
of-
had no idea what they were talking
Yeah,
about. Now I can understand.
The small containers, so that's, we
And
didn't
the
have
pod-
anything on that, so.
Pod is a brand name. There's other pack rat and types like that.
What?
Pack rat, they're called.
Other company, yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're going to keep them in the street, or they have to put them in their driveway?
Well, they're supposed to be on the property. Now, the new ordinance, I believe, says if there's no place on the property to put a dumpster or a pod type thing, then you would have to get approval from the police department to make sure it's has cones and it's in the right place and things like that.
All right.
We don't allow them on the street at all now, so.
Dumpsters or pods?
Yeah, we're gonna try and keep it that way unless it's absolutely necessary.
All right. All right, thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Bennett or Mr. Jones while they're here? No?
No.
Okay. The one thing with the, one of the questions I had with the stormwater management, is that going to help us any with a community rating system for floodplains and things like that, or?
Sure, what Joe could.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the changes that we made in the stormwater management ordinance are more functional, and they're more kind of typographical errors and some clarifications from one ordinance to another. So everything we do in that direction will help with the community rating system should we approach that in the future. This will make us more organized and more efficient in our floodplain management through stormwater management regulations. So yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, for the community rating system is something that we, through FEMA, communities where there is flooding, and we still do have a few parts of Falls Township that people are technically in a flood zone. Thanks really a lot to these two gentlemen, we've managed to remove a lot of people who were paying flood insurance even though they shouldn't have been, because they were wrongly placed into a floodplain by FEMA, decades ago. And largely through the efforts of these gentlemen, they were able to sort of help people get out of the floodplain, which meant that, they didn't have to pay flood insurance. It made it easier for them in terms of mortgages and refinances and things like that. But we still do have some people who are in there. And the community rating system is basically a checklist that if you do certain things as a community to show that you're being conscious about stormwater management, about floodplain protection, that anybody that is in a floodplain in your community can actually get sort of earn points based on what we do, where they will pay a little less in flood insurance. So it's a way to help our residents who may still have to do that. So if it helps a little bit, it helps move us a little bit further down the field. That's a good thing. So thank you for that. Is that it? Any other questions?
That's all.
Okay. Now this is just advertisement. As I said, we're going to be having more comments later on. But I do see one hand in the back for public comment. Is there a motion to open public comment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Tony Batiste, Township resident. The zoning changes, will they affect the area around the Oxford Valley Pool?
We're not
I don't believe so.
No, none, that's not changing.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing is on the rights of way. Will there be anything in the ordinance regarding the utility companies' rights of ways as far as like the electric lines and the phone lines? Because what's happening is the cable companies and Verizon, they string their lines. And then when they want to upgrade or improve capacity or whatever, they string another line. but they never take away the other lines. So it's like you're just getting all this abundance of lines. I don't even think they're using them all. And the squirrels help deteriorate them. And they start sagging and dropping and getting into the trees and everything else. And I just want to know, is there something that can be put into this ordinance to require those companies to actually go back and only have one line per company?
I don't think we can require that. That's sort of out of our ability, quite frankly. That's because it is technically their property. So what the right-of-way that we're doing is, what you're talking about with an easement, or, for example, if you have property between, and you have an area between your sidewalk and your curb, for example, that's the right-of-way generally. So that's if all the underground stuff is in there. That's why you don't really have a lot of ability. If Comcast or Verizon wants to come and bury fiber optics, they can just do it. They may come and just,
that's fine.
right. I mean, but obviously some places in the township it's strung, but the fiber optics are generally underground. The rights of way means that they have the right to do that because it is seen as a public good. It's you're not allowed to block access if somebody else is not fair. So this is sort of cleaning up a little bit of what they would have to do. We are actually going to be looking at another resolution in like a second here that deals with something Harrisburg is trying to do, which you should want to pay attention to because we're paying attention to it. Because it, but in other words, what you're talking about, we really don't have any authority to sort of stop them from doing that. I mean, you could certainly complain to the utility company.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Sorry. Any other public comment? See no hands. Is there a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, if there's no other comments or questions, then we'll look for a motion to, we'll do all these at once, advertise the amendments or in the ordinance changes outlined in item 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11.
Yes. You asking us for a motion?
Is there a motion for that?
Yes,
sorry.
so moved.
Second.
Okay, all right, motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and again, we'll come back in maybe 6 weeks or something, 8 weeks or 7 weeks and look to pass those. Do you want to do the one resolution we talked about now in terms, since we're doing right away? Go ahead, Ms. Gallagher, I'll let you to explain this since it's fresh in our minds.
Which one are we on now? 12?
Well, this is something a little different.
This is not an item on the agenda. Harrisburg is currently considering House Bill 2564, which is known as the Small Wireless Facilities Deployment Act. If this bill passes, it would mandate that local municipalities such as the Township permit wireless telecommunications providers to deploy small wireless facilities within the public rights-of-way. What this means is the little boxes that go on top of telephone poles. It would strip the local municipality's ability to implement any kind of zoning control over where those go and on how many poles within a certain distance they can go. It would essentially allow them to go anywhere within the township. And it would also limit the fees that the township would be permitted to charge for being in the right-of-way to a $25 annual fee. So, which is much less than our current fee, which I believe is in the $300 range, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So the resolution that we prepared would be, if the board is of a mind, to take an official position against the passage of this bill and encourage Harrisburg to implement changes to the bill that would allow the township to retain its local control over zoning.
Yeah, this was something that was just brought to our attention earlier today, and so since it fits in with what we've been talking about, the township does have some authority. For example, before Verizon came in to string fiber optics, they had to come before us and ask for permission to actually go into the rights-of-way of the township, neighborhoods and houses and residents and businesses, and actually lay all the fiber optics for their system. The municipalities do tend to, like having a little bit of control over things. And for example, we do have some control over where communications towers can go for cell phones and other things like that, Wi-Fi, et cetera. This bill would kind of would really strip our ability to have any control over this portion of what companies could do. They could just come and start putting devices almost anywhere they wanted to, on any kind of poles or towers. And we've seen some sort of nightmare scenarios just not too long ago. of what companies wanted to do when they came here, saying, oh, we want to be able to do this and we think we can. We said no. We think this bill that's being talked about in Harrisburg is not constitutional or not in line with federal law. We think the federal law gives us the power to sort of have some control. And so really what we're doing is just kind of a sort of a resolution of protest, letting Harrisburg know that we're not in favor of this. A lot of other communities have done this already. And it's just that we want to have some control over what telecommunication companies are doing in our township on properties that are owned by our residences and businesses. So any comments or questions from Ms. Gallagher regarding that?
No.
Any public comment? I see no hands. All right, is there a motion to authorize that resolution? That'll be 1824.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, item 12 is consider adopting ordinance amending Chapter 184 Sewers and Water. Ms. Gallagher, go ahead. You're back on.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. As you'll recall, we did discuss the changes that are being put in front of the board this evening from the prior version of this ordinance that was passed. The major change is that rather than having these inspections and pumping and hauling performed by an individual that would be employed by TOFA, this is going to now be overseen, in the permitting and the inspections are going to be overseen more by the Board of Health. And the Board of Health has prepared a list of approved pumper haulers that the property owner can then select from that list of about 25 different pumper and haulers within the general vicinity. So that's the major change. Since the ordinance was advertised, we did forward a copy of it to the Department of Health for them to take a look at. And they did have some changes, which we did incorporate into a revised version of the ordinance. So I will just run through those, and if the board is of a mind, I would suggest that the ordinance be approved with these changes, which do not require re-advertising. In the definition section, per the recommendation of the Board of Health, the phrase "as well as the inability to distinguish gray water discharge" was removed from the definition of evidence of malfunction. In sections 89D, 90D, and 90G, specific dates for compliance were listed. Rather than saying 6 months or 1 year from the adoption of the ordinance, we put in October 16th, 2019 and April 16th, 2019 in those respective sections. To maintain consistency with the Board of Health terminology, the word sanitary was deleted from several of the definitions, as well as paragraphs 86B, 87F1, 88G, 88H, 89B, 89F, 89G, 90C, 90D, and 92B. In section 88C, the language was changed to state that applicants for sewage permits shall, rather than may, be required to notify, per the recommendation of the Department of Health. With regard to section 89G, the Department of Health has advised that a permit is only needed if work is completed outside of a structure, not inside the house. So that the language was changed to modify that requirement. Typographical errors were corrected in section 90H and 90J3. And in section 90I, the ordinance had indicated that none of the listed activities required a permit from the Department of Health. However, the Department of Health advised that a sewage permit is required for the leveling of distribution boxes, tanks, and lines. Depending on where the removal of roots and trees are located in the on-lot sewage disposal system, a permit may be required. A permit is not necessary when repairing or replacing a sewage pump, so the language in that section was modified accordingly. In section 91D, the comment regarding expanding the existing disposal area was stricken, as this is not permitted by the Department of Health in any circumstances. In section 91F, the individual spray irrigation treatment system is called the individual residential spray irrigation system, and a single residence treatment and discharge system permitted by DEP is called a small flow treatment facility, so that language was modified. Other than that, there were no changes, no other changes to the ordinance.
That's it?
So it's basically a lot of terminology.
A lot of terminology, just cleaning up from the Board of Health, so all those changes are recommended by the Board of
Yeah,
Health.
it seems like all very just making it consistent so that everyone's talking the same language.
Correct.
Okay. We did meet a couple weeks ago, myself, Mr. Gray, Ms. Gallagher, as well as some representatives from TOFA, with some members of the public who had come out to meetings, our meetings and TOFA meetings in the past, and had expressed some concerns about this. And I thought it was a very, very good meeting. I know some of the residents are here, some of the same people are here, so I thought it was a very, very good meeting. A lot of questions asked, excuse me, a lot of questions answered. And, you know, the one thing, of course, that, you know, the one change that we made that I think was good on everybody's part, was the original ordinance required basically TOFA to hire or contract with somebody who would go out and do inspections in all these properties of septic systems, on-lot septic systems. As Ms. Gallagher said, at the beginning of her comments, the new ordinance essentially just takes the Board of Health's list of approved septic pumpers and haulers and inspectors, and just basically allows residents to choose anyone they want. Pick your own. It might actually be a company that's already doing work for you, in which case you already know who the person is. You might have a relationship with them, and there is some concern. I know what some of the people were concerned what if they're using somebody now who isn't on the Board of Health's approved list, and obviously that presents a possible problem, because why aren't they on the list? Maybe they shouldn't be used, or maybe they just didn't feel like applying. Maybe there's some kind of process they didn't want to go through, but that is something maybe to consider. The other concern that was raised, and we got an answer for the people, and I shared it a little bit earlier with the ones that are here tonight, there was some concern about whether or not the Bucks County Board of Health, who's now going to be taking sort of the bulk of this on, would require older septic systems to file for permits so that they could be approved. And some of the systems we're talking about for some of the residents here in Falls are 40, 50 years old, 30 years old, sometimes more than that. And there was no permitting at that point. So would these systems now have to be, inspected as if they were brand new, possibly incurring hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in fees? That was a major concern, which was understandable. We did get, excuse me, I had conversations with Commissioner Marseglia actually that night and the next following days, and working with her and with Mr. Gray, working with the Department of Health, we were able to get an email actually from them that says the Bucks County Health Department does not require sewage permits for septic systems that predate the department. However, if there's repairs, modifications, that you still would have to do permits at that stage. But for anybody whose systems are in working order, whose systems might be 30, 40, 50 years old, you don't have to contact the Board of Health and get them permitted and pay any fees. They're basically grandfathered in. But so we were able to have that. We sort of have a document that says that. So, and I did give copies of that document to people that are here tonight and told them make copies and share with your friends so they have it too, in case somebody comes knocking and says, "Hey, wait, this should have been inspected." Oh no, So, so hopefully, we've kind of cleaned this up to a point where it's a workable thing. Comments or questions from board members for Ms. Gallagher?
No questions.
No, I'm actually curious, the gentleman in the back of the room, are you guys satisfied with the wording?
Yeah, so I was going to open for public comment. That's okay.
Oh,
That's
actually,
fine.
we should open for public
It's all right.
comment.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, Bob Wing. I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for working with us with this. You did make quite a bit of improvements on it, and we're happy with it. One question I have is, the permits won't be required predating the department. Does anybody have any idea, like, what year that would be?
No. Yeah, we'll find out. I mean,
I mean, it's not that
right,
because I'm sure it's.
Yeah.
You're talking 20, 30, 40 years.
Right.
I was just, curious.
Yeah, we'll
as
have
to,
yeah,
if we knew the
that's
date.
a good question. We can find that out. I think Ms. Gallagher's going to try and find out now, looking, using the internet. Asking Siri if she knows.
That's all right. But thank you very much for cooperating with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for your help too. I mean, obviously you helped make it better yourselves. So thank you. Okay. Any other comments or questions from residents? No? Okay.
I'm actually going to go backwards here. Ms. Gallagher, it seems like there's significant changes to that ordinance. Why wouldn't we re-advertise it?
The changes I read tonight?
Yeah.
While there are several of them, they are very minor language changes, and they really don't rise to the level of something that would constitute a substantial amendment. All the changes that we made between the first ordinance and this second ordinance, they were substantial enough to obviously require re-advertising and everything, but this is really just some language changes that doesn't affect the actual substance of the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right, then we'll look for, this is ordinance
18-4.
18-4. Okay, this has been duly advertised and discussed, obviously. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 18-4?
And Mr. Harvey, just for clarification, that would include all the changes that I read in earlier this evening?
Yes.
She said.
What she said.
Yeah, I'll make that motion to approve 18-4, Mr. Ray, including everything that Ms. Gallagher said.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Item 13, Mr. Gray.
Yes. The 30-day responsible contractors review period for the 2018 landscaping portion of the road program will be completed prior to the next Board of Supervisors meeting in November. In order to continue the process, the board is requested to consider allowing the township manager to finalize the award for the landscaping contingent upon a successful outcome of T&M's responsible contractor review.
Comments or questions for Mr. Gray or Mr. Sullivan regarding the landscaping?
Not at this time.
No? Okay, is there a motion then to authorize the manager to approve the award?
Yes, so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item 14, Mr. Gray.
Yes, this is authorization advertised for the Quaker Penn Park Electric and Cameras project. The board is asked to consider authorization advertised for this project. Bid specifications will be prepared by township staff and Jones Engineering Associates. In addition, Mr. Jason Lawson, Public Works Director, is here for any questions the board may have about this project.
Mr. Lawson, if you wouldn't mind just giving us an idea of what's going on down there in terms of, for the public, people that want to know how we're helping to improve that park.
Sorry about that. Down at Quaker Penn Park, we had a substantial project go on. So we are taking Quaker Penn Park and trying to make it more of a community use park instead of just the boat ramp. We added the playground, we've taken out trees, we're adding picnic tables along the river. Hopefully the pavilion will be used more that's down there. We have the baseball field. So hopefully now it'll be a lot better placed to be utilized by families and stuff like that instead of just the boat ramp, the baseball's done, they leave, then you got some soccer there. So, I mean, you have the beautiful river, which is all cleared out now. We'll be adding picnic tables, the pavilions there, the playgrounds, so people will be able to permit the pavilion to have parties just like they do at the community park. And probably both places will be very nice for them to use. One of the problems is that we have down there is that there was no lighting. There was only lighting at the boat ramp end of the park. So what we did was we added 6 street lights and 6 parking lot lights up further from the boat ramp. So now when you go into the park, it'll be a lot more lighted up, and people will be able to use it, more at night, well, dusk, And also when they're leaving from the boat ramp, some people leave later at night. When it's dark, it'll be more light, and people will probably feel a little more secure or safe there.
Safer.
Yeah. One of the other problems is that it is such a area that is off the beaten path that, you do have, kids that drink and drug use and stuff like that. We're hoping with the lighting and more people being down there, people will be deterred from, being there. They'll be like, oh, there's people here, let's go. I hate to say it, we're pushing them from A to B, but, hopefully at some point in time, we won't have an epidemic of drugs and we won't have this problem, but I don't see that in the near future. But
And
so,
so Okay.
So at this point, we're at a point where the Public Works was able to put in the pole bases, put up the lights, put in the conduit, but they're not, one, we don't have the equipment to pull that much wire through the conduit, and two, their fear is that they don't want to do something that they're normally not doing, break the wire, and then not really know how to correct the problem at that point.
All right.
Electricians are for.
And that's why we're going out to bid for
So we're
some.
looking to go out to bid for just for the electric and also some cameras down there.
Yes, we'll be Matt will be adding cameras. So what we'll do is when he selects what poles that he wants to put the cameras, we'll run down and tap into the wire that will be ran for that, for the receptacles for that.
Okay. All right. Okay. So and the specs we're working on with Mr. Clark's office, correct on this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Comments or questions for Mr. Lawson?
No.
No.
I have a technical question for you. You discussed, when we talked about this, 240 volt lighting
Yes,
as opposed to 120 volt lighting.
yes.
That's going to be okay for the cameras?
The cameras will be 120.
All right.
They'll
Does
be
that
ru-
take into consideration with the specs for pulling the wire and stuff?
Yes, there's separate wire for,
Okay.
specifically for the outlets.
Okay. As for the cameras, right now there are 2 cameras at the boat ramp section. There's no cameras near the new composting bathrooms, the new playground, or even the baseball field. There's not a lot of vandalism. You see a lot of guys down there. You see tire tracks, and we like to get cameras at the entrance so you can see everybody that did come and go. It makes it easier for the police, and they can access the cameras from their phone actually or their car. That's where the camera project came from, portion of it.
Yes.
So the cameras, will they be able to get the license plate? Are they that?
From the way that Matt is setting it up, the camera that will be down when you first come into the park is a bend there. There is a light pole right there. That camera will be low enough to catch every license plate going out. So it will see the vehicle come in. We don't have, well, if it is from Jersey or somewhere, they'll catch the front license plate.
Right, right.
But if something happens, because normally every day someone's down there because we have to remove the debris from the boat ramp. So when they go down, they don't see the tire tracks. The next day they may go down and be like, hey, we got tire tracks.
Right.
So now we'll be able to go back and we'll be able to see what vehicles came in and out. Possibly we'll see the vehicle that came in clean and going out with dirt and mud on it. Like Mr. Dent said, the cameras are down by the boat ramp, so a lot of the damage done, which, like he said, isn't a lot, but it is up by the baseball fields and by the soccer fields.
Yeah, on this, on the
Yeah, the
driveway
muddy
side.
areas there. So the cameras don't pick it up because it's more down towards the boat ramp.
Okay.
But now we'll be able to catch all the vehicles coming in, all the vehicles going out, and Mr. Markey's going to put that camera at a level where we will get the license plate.
Awesome. Good.
And then we'll have a couple by the compost toilet and the playground, which came out, great. I think it's very nice.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Any questions? All right. Any public comment? No? Yeah, I know there are some security concerns. I know there's reports most mornings of a strange man and his dog sort of hanging out down at that park. I don't know what that's.
Get them on camera. With his creative
I mean,
mind.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Wolves and
I have
coyotes.
video proof of everything I've seen. The only thing I don't have pictures of are the coyote.
I believe the coyote.
I've seen a bull that got out of
Yeah.
Pennsbury Manor. We saw a deer stuck in the soccer net. It's not the same day, obviously.
Yeah.
We've had some adventures down there.
But I mean, we have a lot of people that do use the park, and some of them don't feel secure once they go on the backside of that berm where all the trees that we took out. Now it's a lot more open. We cut down the brush and that on the berm, so hopefully they're going to feel a lot more secure and they'll use it more. And it's a nice park. I think it's a nice park. It's just off the beaten path that really no one really gets to see. But if you do get down there, you do come back and come back. Same as our community park.
What's the purpose of the berm? Does it serve a purpose?
The berm was dirt actually taken out, from my understanding, where they built the baseball field, or extra. It might have been extra. They built that dirt up.
It's
and
been there for years.
it was
'cause we
before
had-
Yeah, it was
That-
before the baseball field.
Yeah, see, that's what I was told,
Maybe the
that
boat
it
ramp?
was extra dirt
before that.
put there, and that
Since I was a
berm
kid.
was
Yeah.
Yeah.
then made into,
Probably doesn't serve a purpose.
stabilized.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know, predates me.
I think the original idea was people could sit on the berm and watch the games. But I
On
don't think we
soccer
had-
games?
The idea was to have a lot of dirt there. I don't think we get as much dirt as we thought we were going to get, so probably doesn't really serve any purpose at this time.
Maybe some
It's a
point
de-
consider removing it.
It's a decent sized berm. I mean, you
Yeah.
could sit up there. I mean, having my son played a lot of soccer games down there, and you could see younger kids that would get bored very quickly, just sort of rolling down the hill and running up and rolling down the hill. It was
Still the same berm, still the same stuff out
yeah, right, that's which is fine.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
there's a purpose.
assuming that the berm is probably,
They hadn't do that on their
Jim
iPhones.
helping us with the floodplain down there, where we're putting the compost to us, so we may not want to remove it,
Yeah.
because it may change our levels on the floodplain,
I think we're all right.
so.
Okay. All right, so is there a motion then to consider authorizing for advertisement for the electric and camera project at Quaker Penn Park?
So move.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. All right, we're looking at minutes from September 18th. Comments or questions, corrections?
None from me.
No? We can't compliment Mrs. Poland. She's
Yeah,
not
she's
here.
not here.
I'm not going to
I
give.
doubt she's going to be watching.
Yeah, not going to give Ms. Mull any credit for doing this. She didn't do these. So, all right, is there a motion then to accept the minutes as presented?
So, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Sullivan, engineer's report.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. During the progress of the work on Walton Drive for the 2018 road program, contractor encountered a water service that was apparently mismarked by something close to 14 feet. Mr. Medlar is in the audience to make sure I don't say anything incorrect at this point.
That's a tough job.
Anyway, unfortunately, this happened right around lunchtime at the school, and there was not enough water for the school to serve lunch, so the school was closed early that day. PA American has decided they want to do this work at night. They've been doing it for the last couple of nights. At this point, we haven't heard any complaints yet. They've done about 3 services out of somewhere around 12 to 14. JDM. General Asphalt will be back on site tomorrow to start working again behind them, and PA American should be able to stay ahead of them, and so whatever delay is caused is over now. They'll continue to put in the storm sewer as we go along.
All right, yeah, and one of the reasons why they're replacing these, first off, they mismarked them, so it wasn't the fault of our contractor, it was the fault of the Pennsylvania American. They just, you see people come out, they spray, blue and red and yellow paint, so you know where things are, and then contractors know where to dig and not to dig, and they were off by 14 feet. So, just kind of a lot. But I think that's the technical term. But and one of the problems, of course.
Find a way.
Yeah.
Sort of.
One of the problems and one of the reasons why you have Pennsylvania American out there replacing the lines from the main to the homes is that they were plastic pipes. And they weren't metal, and so they're harder to find with the metal detectors they use. And so they're going and sort of replacing all of them, so now they're going to know where they are and easier to find in the future if they have to do something like this at some point. So, we apologize for any inconvenience. My understanding is things went pretty smoothly and things continue to go pretty smoothly there, so thank our staff for staying on top of them. And the road program was delayed about a week or so, so hopefully
About a
it'll
week
be
or so, yeah.
up and running and the weather stays nice and things will be done in a timely manner. So, any other updates from you, Mr. Sullivan, or anything?
No, Mr. Harvey, thank you.
Questions for Mr. Sullivan?
None.
No.
Okay. Motion to accept the engineer's report.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, bill list. I know there was a correction put at our place this morning or today. Bill list in the amount of $1,795,191.75. Okay, of that roughly 1.8 million, about 1.4 million is salary, benefits, health, life insurance, a police vehicle, and there was one more big ticket item. I don't remember what it was. But yeah, about 1.4 out of the 1.8 was really just those couple items. You know, salary and benefits takes up the most, obviously. You know, new police vehicles aren't cheap, and insurance for the township, not just health insurance, but, you know, liability insurance for the township is about $124,000. So, comments or questions for Mr. Gray regarding the bill list?
Nope.
No.
Okay. Is there a motion then to pay the bills for October 16th, 2018?
So moved.
Second.
I almost did it. Mrs. Mall, call the roll, please.
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Boraski?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Okay, so we had executive session before. We had a summary of that. I see Lieutenant Ward in the back. Police Department report, please. Patiently waiting for his turn.
Good evening. Chief Wilcox, excuse me, would like everyone to know that Corporal Wolverton and Patrolman Yeager are back in the elementary schools. The parochial schools that we service they're currently teaching DARE. In the Pennsbury schools, there's a new program this year that they are working with the school district with. They're going to be teaching that in the elementary schools at Pennsbury. Also, John Yeager, Officer Yeager, is scheduled to speak at the Bucks County Technical School on October 25th at 6:30. He will be speaking about drug identification and use in your children and suicide prevention. Also, we're making arrangements with the elementary schools in the Pennsbury School District to continue the Chief for the Day program this year. The students will be selected by their teachers, and then names will be presented to us, and then the chief will then choose from each elementary school. The Citizens Police Academy is continuing every Tuesday and Wednesday night here at the Township Building in the Township Meeting Room. And the Great Shredder event is going to be occurring next Saturday, October 27th. The time will be from 10 to 1. It'll be out in the front parking lot of the Municipal Building. Also, at the same time, will be the drug take-back. If anybody has any pharmaceutical drugs in their homes that they want to get rid of, that will be collected between 10 and 2 o'clock. The only thing that we ask this year is nobody to bring syringes. We do not take syringes to dispose of them. It's just for pill form drugs and liquid form of pharmaceutical drugs. Also, last year, a business inadvertently came for the Great Shredder event. We do not do businesses. It's not for someone to shred all your business files. This is just for the residents with your personal bills and stuff like that to be shredded. That's all I have tonight.
Okay. And just for clarification purposes, that Mr. Yeager, Officer Yeager speaking at the tech school, that's open to everybody.
Yes, that's open to everybody.
Yeah, it's not just
yes.
not just parents of tech school students. It's you know, just
the general format.
Yeah, it's general format for anybody that wants to go. And he really is. I spoke to him at Falsington Day. I told him, you know, and he's obviously a very, very good police officer. But I said, you know, he may have missed his calling in terms of being a teacher because
this is his passion. He does a great
What's the
job.
date and time again?
It is October 25th at 6:30 at night.
Okay. So, any comments or questions or for Lieutenant Ward about police activities?
No.
No. None.
Just one thing, I had a conversation with Sergeant Finelli last week, but in terms of the ordinance we passed last year about motels and hotels keeping registers, how's that working out in terms of battling the opioid problems?
We've done very well. I can't give you the number of arrests,
That's
but
fine.
we've made a lot of arrests using that format. The hotels have all been cooperating with us. There was one instance where we had a problem with the hotel, but we talked it out, we worked it out, and it was just like a miscommunication of a new manager coming in that didn't understand what was going on. But they've been totally cooperative. Along Lincoln Highway, Ace Motel, Falls Motel, the guys are really clearing it out. They'll find a lot of warrants in the morning, and they'll take care of that right away.
Okay. All right. Good. Good news.
Yeah. All the classy spots.
Yes, yes, it was
The
all
bigger
the problem
hotels,
areas.
the bigger hotels were okay with it?
The bigger hotels, we are getting a number of, it's more like when we're going in to get the list, the guys are forming relationships with the manager saying, hey, is anybody
Yeah.
here that's raising your hackles? And that starts an investigation there, and we've made some pretty serious arrests weight-wise with drugs regarding that. And now they're starting to call us before we're even going to get in the list. Usually in the morning, who's ever assigned to it will go get around to the local motels and hotels and get the list, and then they'll start running the names through the database. But as soon as 7 o'clock comes, they knew that we're coming on, they'll call right away and say, hey, we've got somebody that you might want to look at.
Awesome.
Okay, yeah, good to hear. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Manager, comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few items tonight. First item is in regard to escrow releases. Township received several escrow release requests for the following 7 businesses. They include Marmar Builders. This is letter of credit release number 6, $76,065.33. TBU Wells AM Gaddy, Canal Road, Newbold Road. This is a cash escrow in the amount of $3,247.29. Harsco, located at 905 Southport Road, $5,226.94. It's a cash escrow. 7-Eleven, located at 303 West Trenton Avenue. This is $754.50, also a cash escrow. Fairless Hills Shopping Center, located at 480 Hood Boulevard, $1,122. That is also a cash escrow. T-Mobile, located on Stony Hill Road, $260.50, cash escrow. And Cricket Communications. All of these are bonds. 65 MY Lane, $4,456. PA Avenue, Post Road, $4,022. 364 West Trenton Avenue, $4,023.40. 275 Lincoln Highway, $3,422.83. And 8900 Old Route 13, $2,658.84.
Okay. All right, comments or questions regarding any of the escrow releases?
No.
None.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve all of them?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Mole?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Boraski?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dent?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
The following businesses were approved to open operations in Falls Township during the month of September. AP Modern Electric, located at 246 Pinewood Drive. Infinity Tax and Accounting LLC, 225 Lincoln Highway, Suite 152. 3J Floors and Blinds, also located at 225 Lincoln Highway, Suite F10. Spirit Halloween, 330 Commerce Boulevard. New Ultimate Billing, 433 South Oxford Valley Road. TLOR Holdings, LLC, located at 81 Big Oak Road, Suite 122. Arepi BC Industrial, LLC, 3000 West Cabot Boulevard. Heisen Books, 225 Lincoln Highway, Suite 208. And finally, Tile Maya, located at 714 Auburn Road.
Wow, a lot of new businesses.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good thing.
Yeah. So, okay.
Just a few announcements on. Actually, we'll have 3 dates for leaf collections. They will be Saturday, November 17th, Saturday, December 1st, and Saturday, December 15th. Leaves must be bagged in 30-gallon biodegradable paper bags or placed in 30-gallon trash containers without lids. They are to be placed curbside by 6 a.m. on collection days in the same location as your regular trash pickup. Leaves in any other containers will not be collected.
There is one other item that we've been working with Mr. Gray on. Late last week, we received a request regarding the Residence Inn on Cabot Boulevard. This is a project that dates back to 2005. The developer entered into development agreements with the township and water and sewer service agreement with the township, as this was before TOFA was recreated. In 2007, the maintenance security was released. So we believe that the project was closed out and completed. The property owner is looking to sell to a new company, and the new company's title company has asked the township execute an estoppel certificate, which essentially confirms that the developer's agreement is in full force and effect, and that all of the items that were required in the land development were completed, and that essentially no money is owed to the township pursuant to that agreement. We are working with Mr. Sullivan to confirm those facts. And as far as the form of agreement, we do have a couple of comments as far as revisions to it, primarily that TOFA is the successor in interest of the township on the water and sewer agreement. I have spoken to TOFA's solicitor, and they are reviewing it on their end, but we would want to revise the estoppel certificate to reflect the fact that we can only guarantee the township agreement. The developer has, or the buyer has indicated that time is an issue for them, so they're asking that the board approve this pending the confirmation with Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Gray's offices that all these items are complete and that we can actually execute this agreement, and pending our approval of the actual form of the estoppel certificate. So if the board is of a mind, they can authorize Mr. Gray to execute this estoppel certificate once those items are complete.
What's that word you keep saying? What kind of agreement?
Estoppel certificate. Basically, it would it would stop the township from coming back and saying, well, you didn't complete X in the land development agreement. So it's saying that they're done. And the title company is requiring this. It's becoming more common with these larger transactions for these larger parcels.
That term before.
It's a legal term. It's a legal term of art.
Oh,
It's
it's
a
like
big-
French
it's a
or
big-
something?
It probably has some roots in Latin, but
He's making that up. He has no idea.
Yeah, he has no clue, I know. I was actually asking Ms. Gallagher, but
I just thought I'd jump
go
in.
back to Google.
All right,
All right, so basically, we're essentially just, once you guys have checked out that everything's fine, Mr. Gray has to send off a letter, and so we'll authorize Mr. Gray to do that pending your findings.
Correct.
Is there a motion to that effect?
Yeah,
So moved.
seconded.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. All right, board comment. Mr. Galloway?
No comment.
Mr. Boraski?
No, thanks.
Mr. Dents?
No comment.
Sensing a pattern. Mr. Rocco?
I actually have a few things.
Okay.
I
I do too. That's all right.
wondering if we could get an update on Wawa. Maybe I should ask during engineering report, but does anyone know where we're at with the Wawa?
They put a sign up that says coming soon, I know that.
They're still in the 30-day appeal period.
Got to be close to.
Yeah.
It was a month ago, right?
It was about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, that permits were issued.
Oh, that's right.
My understanding, and I haven't spoken further with the attorneys for Wawa, but my understanding was that they were going to advertise the issuance of the permits, but I'm not sure whether or not that has occurred.
Okay.
They're not required to, that's just something Wawa does.
They are not required to.
Yeah, I was curious, but I did see the sign as well. The other thing, I know years and years and years ago, the board was there was a green person on the board, Snipes, and he used to, I think we used to require land developers to put money into a tree fund, right.
Yeah.
I thought of it today because we're taking down a lot of our trees, and we passed, what, 3 land developments today? So what, are we allowed to do that, and how did it work in the past? Because we're taking.
The way it worked in the past was that if someone was seeking a waiver from planting street trees, and it mostly, if I recall, and Jim can help me on this, it mostly happened in the KIPC and other industrial areas when they were asking for that. In lieu of putting those trees in, we would ask them to make a contribution to a tree fund that could be used elsewhere. And I think we have essentially gotten away from that in the last few years. There are some questions regarding the legality of these.
What, shaking people down for tree money?
Shaking people down for tree money, because you're not supposed to be, it's like trees and sidewalks, you're not necessarily supposed to be, you're supposed to review the waivers on their own merits and not whether or not someone's buying their way out of it. So a lot of municipalities stopped enforcing them, but if you'd like, we could take a look again and see if there's been any updates in that area.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're taking, what, over 100 trees down this year? How many trees are we taking down?
Oh, yes, we, We had that program for the emerald ash borer where we had to take down those specific trees. I don't have the number offhand, but we have taken down quite a
It's a
few.
lot, yeah.
Yes.
So that's kind of what made me think of it. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that, but maybe first we see if it's legal.
That's a good first step.
Yeah, it's a good first step.
Yeah. We have, and don't forget, we have planted a lot of like 500 bare root trees, 600?
root trees, yes.
Yeah, 500 or 600 bare root trees over the past several years.
Yeah.
About 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, so it's obviously great, you know, but yeah, I've kind of wondered about that too, just here and there. I do think, kind of remember the legality part of it.
Yeah, I thought that, yeah.
You know, so.
So that was all I had. Thank you.
Okay. A couple of things that we do have some openings on our boards, and I do have, we did have some people who applied for different boards, and I made contact with them. Suzanne Halligan, who was recently appointed to the Pension Board, also has a keen interest in being on the Community and Economic Development Commission. And so I would make a motion to have her appointed to, I would say, the longest seat, whatever that happens to be, on the CEDC. Is there a motion to that, or is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. I also spoke to Elizabeth Royer, who was interested in being on the Disabled Persons Advisory Board. I don't know if she's here this evening or not. No? Okay. So a few unfamiliar faces. I wasn't sure if, I did mention it didn't have to be at the meeting to be appointed, but I had a good conversation with her several days ago. She's very interested in being involved and helping out the community. She's already friends with Tom Stafford, who's been a longtime member of that board, and she's interested in helping out. So I'll make a motion to appoint her. I think there's one opening on that board, to appoint her to the Disabled Persons Advisory Board.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Mhm. And I did mention to her, and I know I've kind of talked vaguely about this before with Mr. Stafford, but Disabled Persons Advisory Board, for the most part, it kind of reviews plans to make sure they kind of comply with ADA, American Disabilities Act regulations. But I'd like to also invite them to sort of be as proactive as they want to be. Anything that they think that we could be doing better to help those who might be who might have disabilities here in the township. Any ideas they have, any things they might see. I know in the past some members have been on the lookout for shopping centers that may have restriped their parking lots and didn't put back a lot of the handicap parking they should have, or things of that nature. But I'd like to sort of invite them to be as proactive as they want to be.
Sounds
so
good,
I'll
yeah.
make some contact with them. And finally, Janine Delwich was interested in being on the Environmental Advisory Council. There is Ms. Delwich. Okay, is here this evening. Ms. Delwich has a pretty remarkable resume. Trying not to make her, to call her out too much. A PhD, some experience, a lot of experience in the food industry, and also I believe some teaching experience was it Ohio State? Was that what it was? Okay. I don't know if there's any Penn State fans, but I'm hoping they don't hold that against you up here on the board. But yeah, as long as there's no Michigan fans up here, you'll be in good shape, I think. But she's interested in being on the EAC. They actually meet this Thursday, so I told her she could, start her tenure right away. So, any comments or questions, Ms. Delwich? No. If not, is there a second to?
Second the motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you for waiting this long. I appreciate you doing that. So, and let's see. Veterans Day is coming up November 11th, when we honor anybody who served in any of the armed forces. We're happy to have our own Navy veteran here, Mr. Galloway, who served our country. November 11th was originally called Armistice Day, and it marked the end of the First World War, which killed roughly 10 million people. It was the worst war by far that had ever occurred in the world up to that point, only to be surpassed by its sequel about 20 years later. This year marks the 100th anniversary of the end of that war. I had planned on mentioning that, of course, being the history teacher. Of course, I don't miss the teachable moment. But I ended up getting notice in the mail from an organization called the United States World War I Centennial Commission. And what they're asking you to do, which I shared with board members, and they liked the idea, they're asking communities across the country to pass what's called a Bells of Peace proclamation, which would ask houses of worship here in Falls Township to ring their church bells at 11 a.m. on November 11th. And the war ended officially at 11 a.m. on the 11th of November. And it was a symbolic 11th hour because the people who had started the war and carried out the war really felt that they were close to destroying civilization. And it terrified them to the point that they wanted to be a little symbolic and end the war at the 11th, literally the 11th hour of the 11th day, the 11th month. I'll just read the proclamation here. Whereas tolling of bells is a traditional expression of honor and remembrance, and whereas a century ago, 4.7 million American sons and daughters put on the uniform to serve our nation, whereas men and women from our own Fair Falls Township served selflessly and honorably in World War I. There were 375,000 American casualties, including 116,516 deaths. Now be it resolved that Falls Township and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania does hereby call upon citizens and institutions of our community to toll the bells in remembrance of the armistice at 11 a.m. Local time on November 11th, 2018. I'll ask for, I'll make the motion. Is there a second to make this proclamation?
Second the motion.
Yes.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Okay. Just for, again, the historian's sake, keep in mind that it was the way World War I ended that essentially set the stage for World War II, which killed roughly somewhere in the area of 100 million people. It was World War I that led to the Communist Revolution in Russia, which created the Soviet Union. And so you can definitely link World War I with the Cold War, with the Korean War, which killed 35,000 Americans, with the Vietnam War, which killed 58,000 Americans, and with everything we went through that time period. And so and it was World War I that also redrew the boundaries of the Middle East, causing many of the tensions that we see today in Saudi Arabia and Iraq and Syria and Iran and Turkey. And so this war, which has often been eclipsed and not many people remember it, there aren't many movies about it, there are no video games that kids play about World War I. It had an absolutely monumental effect on world history. It continues to this day in many ways. So
there's plenty of books at the library.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, but even when you think about History Channel and things like that, you really don't see a whole lot of specials on World War I. It's sort of gotten forgotten about. So, so thank you for that. And the 116,000 Americans who died obviously died for freedom, and part of that freedom that we ask people to pay special attention to is the right to vote. And Election Day is just a few weeks away. I know people are looking forward to it, so they don't have to dodge the TV commercials anymore, and they can see the signs go away and stop getting as much mail in their mailbox. But you know, for a lot of people, this is a critical election. Every election is critical in some way, shape, or form. And as they say, if you don't vote, you don't complain. You know, you get the country that you elect. You know, huh?
That's not what they say, but go ahead.
Okay. You know, you get the country that you elect, and so based on who you vote for. I mean, obviously, we're happy with at least our election results up here, and we hope that you are too. You know, we encourage you to come out and vote. You know, polls open at 7 a.m. They close at 8 p.m. Okay, so remind anybody of that in a couple of weeks, because we don't usually have a first meeting around that time, but we don't have that anymore. So with that, I want to thank everybody. It's been a slightly longer than usual meeting. We've gotten a little spoiled over the past several months, but and the pink ties, obviously, and ribbons, which we got from our police department, are obviously in honor of breast cancer. So we ask all of the women out there to make sure that they're safe and getting mammograms and they're required to be done, and making those doctor's visits to make sure that you know, if anything's caught, it's caught very, very early. And so we a little remembrance and a little bit of honor of those who've been fighting that battle, those who've lost it, and those who've won, and all their families who have to go through everything with them. So, thank you very much for a good meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.